Westchester County Tourism and Film, coming to you live from a sunny day outside of one of our favorite attractions at Lyndhurst. It's great to have you with us for our second workshop on how to use Google My Business to make sure that both our local residents and our prospective visitors to Westchester County can find your business, get accurate information, and be motivated to come see you, spend some money, and visit the rest of the county. If you missed our first session last week, we've got it posted on our website. It's actually on the same page where you may have gone to register for this webinar, which is visit westchesterny.com/register. We'll send that out to you afterward. I just want to let you know we're providing this as a free service to help you get through these hard times and to be positioned to prosper afterwards. So we're thrilled to be doing it. We've got a lot of other things going on here, so we hope you are receiving our communications, and if there's anything we can do to help, please reach out, let Natasha or me or Sarah or Sandra know. And I think with that, I will turn it over to CA, who is going to lead us through our advanced approach to utilizing Google My Business. Thanks very much for joining us.
Great. Thanks, Barry. My name is CA Clark, and I'm with Miles, and I will be taking you through this second session today. We'll do a real quick review. This is a program that we have done in over 170 different destinations, including some in South Pacific, which is actually where I am right now in Auckland, New Zealand. So first of all, just a couple of reminders. A lot of the things that we're talking about here will be about keeping information up to date. And that's because right now, more than ever, confidence is really critical. So I'll be talking about in several different points here about which kinds of information we need to make sure that we're keeping up to date. And in a lot of cases, that's on a daily or a weekly basis, because people's expectations when they're trying to make decisions are very much about what is happening right now. So a lot of this is about the customer confidence and the need for that information to be as up to date as possible. So here's a quick agenda. First, we'll do a little bit of a recap. There is a recording, as Barry mentioned, so you can review that after. If you want to go back to the first one, but I'll just do a couple of slides to recap from the part one, and then we'll talk about reviews. We'll talk about how to respond to reviews, different reasons. There's a bunch of different stuff in there about reviews. So we have a section about messaging, and that's connecting directly with customers, which is a great thing to do right now. We have one of my favorite sections, which is about questions and answers, a section about managing images that also includes 360s and video. Then we'll talk about posts. And lastly, we'll talk about some of the insights that you can get out of Google My Business dashboard. We do have, as Barry mentioned, so we do have the ability to ask some questions. So if you have a question during the session, just put it in the chat, and both Casey and Barry will be monitoring those. If we can answer those during that, we'll do that. And if we can't, then we'll try to hit those at the end. So quick recap, the business profile, everything we're talking about will be in the business profile, which is this card that Google has, sometimes called the knowledge panel, that collects all the information that they know about your business. That can be in information that you have provided, so it can come from a couple of different sources. It also comes from your customers, and it comes from several other places where Google kind of aggregates and scrapes information and puts it into that card. That business profile is the single largest source of organic exposure for your business in almost every case. In some cases, that can be up to 85% of your online exposure is going to be tied to that business profile. This is the checklist from before, is making sure that we have claimed the business and that you have full access to that. Downloading the GMB app is a great idea because that's the best way to get notifications about what's going on in there. And then making sure that we have the basics covered. That's name and address, any phone numbers that you have. Websites, particularly if you have multiple websites, if you're a restaurant and you have an online order versus a menu or things like that. Hours are critically important right now, and then expanded information like service areas, categories and attributes, menu, services, and products. All of those are type dependent, so that will change depending on what kind of type your business is. But those are all really important things to kind of foundationally set up your listing to be found. You will remember from last time this chart that talks about the reasons that a business shows up or doesn't show up in what's called the local pack. And those three things are distance, relevance, and prominence. And we'll be talking a little bit more about them today. The most important of those is distance, although that's not something that we can really control because we can't move our business to wherever the customers are looking for us. So we'll be focusing on the relevance and prominence part. This sort of spaghetti looking chart, which you probably remember from the earlier presentation, I just wanted to highlight is updated now. So if you remember that last one, the Google My Business signals was a little bit over 25%, and that was from last year. This is the 2020 result, and you can see there's a significant upturn in the importance of GMB signals. So this is now topping 30%. Of the reasons that a business shows up or doesn't show up in the local pack is now over 30%. So that is highlighting that this is increasingly important to your listing. So that's a really good result for today's presentation anyway, because all of the things that you're doing in your profile are going to be even more important to your ranking. In short, better business profiles drive more exposure and more engagement for your business, and those are both things that we will be highlighting here. Will be ways to improve both of those things. We want to help you maximize the exposure and the engagement for your business because it's good for everybody. It's good for you, it's good for visitors, it's good for locals, and it's good for the destination. So these are everyone wins when you are doing as much as you can do inside this your Google My Business profile. Pretty much everything we're going to talk about today will be free. There are a couple of places where there are optional third parties. We don't have any affiliation with any of them. Almost everything we're going to talk about is completely free. So let's start by talking about ratings, reviews, and replies. When we're talking about reviews, we are talking about the star rating and the review that is directly attached to your business profile inside Google's products. So this is not aggregating reviews from somewhere else. This is not reviews from social or Facebook or TripAdvisor or anything. These are reviews that are actually posted and are attached more or less permanently to your listing inside Google's system. They're also the source of the star rating. So a couple of stats for you in terms of the importance of these reviews. This is from a study by Bright Local. 86% of consumers read the reviews for local businesses. That's a pretty high number. This is a really critically important one. Almost 60% of consumers will only consider using a business if it has 4 or more stars. Now, some of that is a little bit dependent on the market. Sometimes different markets have a little bit of a shift, and I'll talk a bit about that in the next couple of slides, but this is a pretty important one, right? That's almost 60% of the consumers are really only looking for a business that has 4 stars or more, and they're not really considering anything below that. And about 89% of consumers do read the business responses to reviews. So that's another one that we'll talk about in just a second. Now, the question that we get all the time is, what is the rating that I should be targeting? What is a good rating? So do I have a good rating? Do I have a bad rating? And this is a chart that attempts to answer that. This is from a company called Uberall, which has some really interesting kind of dorky stats. So you'll see a couple of slides in here. These are some of my favorite ones. Essentially what they did in this study is they looked at the relationship between a rating, a star rating, and the conversion rate. And we'll be talking about the conversion rate later. And what they found was that really this is not a game of 1 stars to 5 stars. This is a game of 4.4 stars to 4.9. And you'll notice that the conversion rate drops when we get to 5.0. So that conversion rate goes up to 4.9, and then it drops at 5. And that's because people tend to be suspicious about businesses that have a 5.0 have a perfect rating. So don't worry if you do have 5 stars, that's fine. But don't worry if you don't is really what it comes down to. So the answer to the question, what rating am I supposed to be targeting, is 4.4. That's really the kind of the target that you're looking for to maximize your exposure and to maximize your conversion. And anything in between that 4.4 and 4.9 is a really solid result. again, there can be some variations depending on markets. Sometimes markets tend to shift a little bit lower. This is sort of a general number to give you a place to start. Second question, or the follow-up question to that we get, is how many reviews am I supposed to have? And again, this study looks at by category. It looks at the number of reviews, both the average number, which is the blue one, and then the number to achieve the maximum growth, which is in red. And so if we just sort of cut right across that, as a general rule of thumb, you should have at least 100 reviews. So that's an important thing to think about. You have your rating. We need to have a 4.4. We need to have at least 100 reviews that are supporting that 4.4. If you have more than that, fantastic. Also keep in mind, this will be a moving target. If we look at this again next year, that those reviews will have climbed up again. So if you're below 100 reviews, definitely want to think about ways to acquire additional reviews, and we have some suggestions about that. So this is all in that prominence bucket. This is all in the bucket. Earlier we talked about, in the last session, we talked about categories and things like that are really in relevance. This is in that prominence bucket that is indicating to Google whether or not your business is a trustworthy and a likely answer to whatever the query is that people are doing. And remember that local pack is triggered by a place and a keyword, and the combination of those two things is what produces that local pack. Now, here's my spaghetti chart again. This is the updated one from 2020. You will notice that review signals have also ticked up. So that used to be third and now has moved up into the second spot. So the two most important things determining whether your business shows up in that local pack and in other products. So this is not just in the local pack, but it is in other places. The two most important things affecting your exposure are going to be GMB signals and reviews. And when we combine those two things, you're looking at pretty close to 50% of the reason they show up is between those two things. 81% of the reviews are 4.0 or higher, and less than 4% are 1 star. However, so that's good. Most of the time when people are doing reviews, they're giving you the in that 3, 4, 5 range. Usually people don't give the 1 star reviews, but that also highlights that the really important part of this is that if you do get a 1 star review, it's quite significant. So a 1 star review, depending on how many reviews you have, might be worth 3 or 4 or more 5-star reviews in terms of how it balances out your rating. Because remember, really just going from 4.4 to 4.9 and any fluctuations inside of there can be quite significant. One of the most important things that you want to do is calculate what's called your rating vector. So when we were talking about the local pack earlier, one of the signals, one of those prominent signals, part of it is obvious. It's about the rating, what your rating is. It's about how many reviews you have, but then it's also about things like rating and review velocity, which is how many times your business is reviewed in any time period. And the other one is the rating vector, and that's showing whether your overall rating is going up or down. So we can calculate that. You can make up your own metric. The one that we use internally is to calculate the average score for the last 15 reviews. So what we do is we take the overall score, which should be over 100 reviews, and then we compare that to the most recent reviews. So we take the last 15, we average those out, and then we compare those two numbers, and then that's the rating vector. So if our overall number is 4.4, and we take just the last 15 reviews, and we have a 4.53 average, that's good. That is a rating vector that's going up, and that's on the rise, and that's going to signal to Google's algorithms and to consumers that that things are headed in a positive direction, right? Your rating is actually going up. You're doing even better than you were doing before. Let's say we calculate that same thing for a different business, and our 4.4 average is now compared to 4.42 over the last 15. That's great. Holding steady, we don't need to worry about that. We're doing exactly what we were doing before, so we're nice and steady. The one you really want to watch out for is this one. So if we do a calculation, our average is 4.4 overall, and we do a calculation of the last 15, and it's 4.1. That's a downward vector. And that is signaling to Google's algorithms that there's something going on with this business. And the bigger the drop there, the more impact that can have. And I've had a number of different businesses. I used to work in our hospitality division. I've had a number of different businesses who we observed this downward trend in, and their exposure significantly drops off, and it's very difficult to get back. So this is one of the best things in this presentation, is to calculate your review vector. and then pay attention to that, because if you see that review vector going down, you want to figure out why, and you want to do everything that you can to try to turn that around. One of the ways that you can do that is to respond to reviews. So I have a couple of notes in here about how we respond. But the first question is, there's several questions. One is, does it matter if I respond to reviews? And then if so, how many reviews am I supposed to respond to on average? And so here again is one of those geeky charts from Uberall, where they looked at the relationship between the conversion rate for the business and the number of replies to reviews by the owner. And essentially what this says is that you should be targeting responding to about 30% of your reviews. So the answer to the first question, does it matter? It absolutely matters whether or not.
So what we're showing here is
it absolutely does matter whether or not you respond to the reviews, and it does matter how many you respond to, but you don't have to respond to all of them. You just need to focus on about a third of them. This does two different things. It is signaling to consumers when they are trying to make a decision about a business. It's signaling to them that that you are paying attention, that you are a business owner that is paying attention to their customers and that is actively engaged. So that's a really good signal for consumers, but it's also a really good signal for Google's algorithms, because they're looking at the frequency of those replies and using that in part to gauge whether or not you're going to be a reliable and trustworthy answer to whatever the query is that the consumer is searching for. So respond to about 30% of or a third of the reviews is what you want to target. You don't have to respond, doesn't have to be anything really in depth. Obviously there are certainly ways that are better than others, but positively responding to some nice 5-star reviews is a fine thing to do, and you just want to do that on about 30% of them. One of the greatest things is to know when those reviews come through. And so if you go into settings, there's a little tick box in there where you can choose to have it email you whenever you get a review. If you've downloaded the app, you will have noticed that the app dings all the time telling you that there are reviews to be responded to. So that's really one of the important parts, is to make sure that you know when a review comes in. And the key reason that you want to know that is that that you want to be looking for those for like a 1-star review. So if you get a 1-star review, you have a very short time period to try to turn that around. These are the guidelines for Google for responding. Remember, this is a public forum. It is not a discussion. There is one review and one reply only. There is no thread that goes beyond that. So those are the only two things that exist. They are more or less permanently attached to your listing. So your reply can be edited, but obviously the review cannot be edited by you, can only be edited by the person who posted it. So remember that it's a public forum, right? Try to keep things short and sweet, but really what you're looking for is negative responses. So if you have a negative response to something, you want to keep that really short, and you want to encourage those people to contact you offline. You can't, threaten them or incentivize them or anything else to change the review, but you can try to find out what their problem is and see if there's a way that you can address that. So what you're asking for, anytime you see a 1-star review, you want to respond to it right away and say, I'm so sorry you had that problem. Please contact me, come into the store, give me a call, something else. I would love to understand more and, see if there's something we can do. Do all of that offline. If that happens, then you can sort of politely ask them and say, this is really important to my business. I would appreciate it if you would adjust the review if you feel like I've resolved your problem. Is that going to happen every time you get a negative review? No. Is it going to happen 1 in 10? Probably not. It might be 1 in 100. But given how important a 1-star review is, it's worth pursuing those, at least in that first response, to see if you can get someone. Because if you turn around one 1-star review, it's probably worth 5 or 10 or even 25-star reviews.
ACA,
now, yes.
Given what you just said, would it not make sense to also extend that to 2-star reviews as well, given that the negative impact on your average is so important?
Yes, absolutely. Even a 1-star or a 2-star, most people, so most of these, we saw this earlier, but over 80% of them are going to be in that 4-star range, right? Like that's sort of where people put their reviews. So really 2 and 3 don't come up that much. Because people are either saying, it was great, it was 5, it's pretty good, it's 4, or they're saying this was terrible and here's why. So this does show a 2-star review here, but those are fairly rare. But you're right, Barry, that is also one that you would want to try to respond to. One of the most common questions is, can I remove a review? So here's one where it's a negative review. Can we remove that? And the answer is sort of. So you can flag a review. You see that little shish kebab menu there. So you can go in and flag a review, but there's a really narrow set of circumstances where you can get that review removed. The review basically has to be removed. There are some automated processes, but for the most part, flagging a review is going to result in a human looking at that and making a subjective decision about it. So these are the different reasons that according to Google, you can flag a review. Most of them are pretty obvious. They're harassment or they're offensive. The ones you want to pay attention to are the two at the bottom, which is impersonation and conflict of interest. Impersonation is the terms of service say it has to be a first person experience. So impersonation is, my mother-in-law had the worst time at this business. That technically is a violation of the terms of service. And so you can, if you see one of those, you can flag those, and those should be removed fairly easily because they do violate the terms of service. I suppose if you have a 5-star review that says my mother-in-law had the best time, then I guess don't flag them. But that is one thing to look out for. If it does happen to you, that's one that you can flag and probably reliably get taken off. Conflict of interest is another one. That's, reviewing your own business, which you're not going to do. The former employee, that's one that usually can get removed pretty easily. And then, of course, competitors trying to manipulate your ratings. The problem with that is that generally speaking, competitors who are trying to manipulate your ratings, if that is happening, don't self-identify themselves. So it's really difficult to prove that. Unless you have really concrete evidence that you can send through to a support person on the other end. It's worth flagging it, but it's not worth fighting about, and it's not worth really investing a significant amount of your life in trying to fight over what you think might be a competitor. So you're really better off trying to drive the velocity and the rate and the vector of your reviews in a positive direction by encouraging people to make reviews. Just keep in mind, especially during this, a lot of most of Google is still working from home, and they do have high demand here. So you will probably get this message that says, listen, we heard you, don't flag these over and over again. We're going to look at them. Ultimately, a human does look at those issues, but it can take some time to do that. There is a form that you can go to that takes you to a sort of a shortcut into that process where you can get a little bit closer to a Google My Business specialist. You still have to jump through some hoops to do that, but there is a link there that will try to shortcut the process to get to someone where you can actually explain whatever your situation is if you think you have something that fits that criteria. All right, so here's different ways to encourage positive reviews, and this is one of the best things that we can do is talk about the how we get positive reviews. So how do people do that? Most often that's going to be in person during the sale. That's the most common way to ask for a review. And second one would be in an email, which is also pretty important right now. You'll note in here that 15% of the people did it in exchange for a discount, which is a violation of Google's terms of service. So I guess that was someone who hadn't read the rules there. So anyway, what you want to focus on is doing that in person or during the sale. And basically, you're just saying these reviews are really important to my business. If you had a great experience, I would appreciate you posting a review. You can take any kind of link shortener if you want to do that. You can just ask them to do that. When I used to work in the hospitality division, we had cards that the front desk would hand out that had, TripAdvisor and Google and some other stuff on there that asked people to post reviews. And Google has also put a short name system into place, which is a little bit like a Twitter handle. So in your listing, you can go in and add a unique short name. And it has to be, combination of your business, and they are unique. So you have to choose something that someone else hasn't already chosen. But once you have that, you can use Google's own URL shortener that is specifically for this to link directly to your business profile. So that's g.page/your short name. And then you can also use that for a review. So you can put that on a card or something else. Poster, if you want, that will take people directly to your review using that little short name. So that's a quick little answer. There's also a kind of a support site called Marketing Kit with Google, where you used to be able to order swag They will still send you some stickers and things like that, but mostly what it's about at the moment is pre-formatted posters and social media posts. So it won't post it for you, but it does take your reviews and suggest you can download an image and post it to other social media that has notes from that review, and it will have have your short name in there. So you can also do that. There's a bunch of them, as you might imagine, that are related to COVID-19, like we're open for takeout, but not something else. We're open for delivery, things like that. So you can kind of shortcut that process. If you go in and use that link, you can type in some couple of notes and use the pre-formatted stuff, print it out, tape it right up on the front of your business. So there are some things that will help with that in there. Next up, we'll talk about messaging, and this is communicating directly with customers. This is a great thing to be doing right now. People are increasingly, I mentioned that at the beginning about confidence, is about consumer confidence. They want to know that a place is open. They want to know that it's still doing the thing that they expected it to do before they make any decisions. So this is a great time to do messaging. But there are some things you want to consider before you enable that. This is not enabled by default. It is only enabled through the app. So you have to download that GMB app, and you have to go through the steps to turn on messaging if you want to do that. There's a little tab in there that says messaging, and then you can turn it on. It lets you put in a greeting message, and then it says, okay, now you can receive a message. Usually within a couple of minutes, your business listing will get updated with these two features. So there'll be a little message button up here where the directions and call are. And then there'll be this floating panel at the bottom that says message. So when a consumer sees that, they can hit that message, and then they can ask you a question. It will come through to your app, and then you can answer the question for that business in more or less real time. This is not a public conversation. It is not publicly attached to your listing, but don't forget that people can still screenshot that. So you still do want to be careful about how you communicate. It just isn't as important as it is when we're talking about reviews. Best practices. So the thing with reviews is that if you're going to turn it on, you need to have a commitment and a plan for how you're going to respond. And one of the primary reasons for that is that Google reports how often you respond. So this says contact us now, usually responds in a few minutes. That could say in a few hours. Any of those are fine. The problem with that would be is if it says you respond in a few days, that's not a good look, and you can actually be delisted from this service if you do that. So be prepared to answer quickly. And make sure that you have a plan for answering quickly. It is now it is part of the app, so you can have multiple people logged into it. So it doesn't have to be, you can share the account with other people. And so you can actually have a plan here where instead of coming to a single phone the way it used to be, you can actually have multiple phones that it's coming to you. And you can set up some sort of expectation that during this time, this person is going to respond, and during this time, this person is going to be responding. It doesn't have to be 24 hours. That's not the point. You just want to make sure that if someone does ask you a question, that there is a person assigned to answer that. Next up, we'll talk about questions and answers. So earlier we made some references in the first one about the differences between the desktop version and the app version, that there were certain features that are in one but not in the other. This is a feature that isn't in either. It is actually part of search. It's part of the search engine result page, and you can find it when you search for the name of your business. You'll see this little block that says questions and answers. And the thing about questions and answers is that they are asked and answered by consumers, and so they can there's essentially a whole conversation that's going on there. So those questions get answered by local guides. There are actually over 70 million local guides worldwide right now. And the local guides program is a sort of a gamification that the Maps team put into place in order to acquire additional information about maps. It turned out in 2020, it's turned out to be one of the key differentiators for Google Maps is this sort of constant influx of information that is coming from users of the Maps app via the local guides program. Now, the trick with that is that the median response for local guides is 20 minutes, which is nowhere near the median response time for owners. And so what happens is you've got consumers who ask different kind of goofy types of questions. This is just an example of what the local guides program looks like. You may have seen this in Maps. If you go to a place, it will say, do you know this place? And then it will start asking you questions. And there's all of these interesting questions that Local Guides uses. Initially, this was, is this place open? And now it's turned into kind of an external brain for Google to be able to push out questions to humans that the machine can't answer. So you see this example in here that has two different pictures of a grocery store, and it says, which one of these is more helpful to you, which is the thing that the computer can't really decide. So the Local Guides program is used in that way to help improve maps and also to improve Google search. But what happens is consumers ask questions, and then other consumers answer those questions, and they don't always answer them in the way that you might expect. So this one says, when is the fall motorcycle meet? And this helpful guy over here said, I'd say in the fall, which is true, I guess, but not exactly the sort of thing that we're looking at. Later, and in this case, it was actually 6 months later, someone came in and answered the question in a much more comprehensive way. That was another Local Guide, but that shouldn't have been the case. We shouldn't have had to wait for that. That should have been the owner of that business who saw that and who answered that question right away authoritatively, rather than letting this conversation go on in the background. This is also where a bunch of really weird stuff shows up. So these are some of my favorites. These are questions and answers that are from the Statue of Liberty. How many inches is it? What is the quality? Does the Statue of Liberty wink? So there's some really weird questions in here. And then the all-time greatest question that I have seen anywhere in here, which is, what is the history of the Statue of Liberty, and did a panda make it? I believe the answer to that is no, but perhaps Barry or someone else can fill us in on whether pandas were involved in its construction. The thing that's going on here is that in our audited list, 95% of the listings had questions from customers, and less than 15% had answers from business owners. And that turns out to be because they don't really know that it's happening. So one thing you want to do is go into settings and tick this box for questions and answers. It's right below the one for reviews, and this will give you an email every time someone asks a question in your listing, so that you can know when you need to go and answer it. And what'll happen is that email will come through, says somebody has a question, you'll be able to click on reply now. It will take you directly to the form to do that, which again is in search. That's in the search engine result page, not anywhere else. And then you'll be able to post an answer, and it will say from the owner. So that's the number one thing that you want to do there, is make sure that you know questions are being asked. And then it's also useful to look through those questions once in a while and see if there are ways that you can flag them. This is much easier than the review ones. The answers here tend to fall off a lot faster, and they tend to be a lot more affected by the flagging. So you can go in and say it doesn't apply anymore, it's off topic, it's incorrect. And have a much higher chance of getting rid of those. It's also easier to post your own answer to that and to have that sort of bubble up to the top. So definitely worth taking a look at that. You can also, and I encourage you to do this, you can also post your own questions and answers. So you take your frequently asked questions and you just one by one post them into your own Google profile, and then you answer them. So you'll be able to do that whole process when you're logged in on the search engine result page. You search for your business, go to questions and answers, ask a question, post the answer, and then it'll give you this box to be able to answer that question all at the same time. So you just go through that process. This is one of the only places where Google encourages you to post your own information in here. So definitely encourage you to do that. Next up, we'll talk about images. So we'll talk about the visual representation of your business. And as we know, photos are a critical part of how people make decisions, particularly right now. And we'll talk about what those components are. This is some of Google's data. Not surprisingly, listings with quality photos are twice as likely to generate engagement with customers, especially when you think about things that have no photos or have crummy photos. So that's a real answer, real easy one to answer. 90% of the photos that are available from your business are supplied by your customers, but they are less important in terms of views. So what this sort of indicates to us is that photos that are posted by the owner have greater weight, even though there are less of them. So your customers are going to post most of the photos, but they're only going to account for about half of the views, because the owner photos are going to be the other half of those. Always a good idea to take a look at the photos in this section here by customers, to sort of see what people are posting about your business, see what kind of views they have on them and when they were posted. You can flag those. Again, we'll talk a little bit about that. But similar to the other ones, it's flag it once if it doesn't belong, and then really focus on adding new photos. So one of the secrets here is that you want to upload photos frequently, and there's a couple of different reasons to do that. This first chart, which is from Bright Local, says that businesses with a higher number of photos have higher exposure rates. So this is, if you have over 100 photos, you have a significantly higher, and I would say 291% is significantly higher exposure inside Google's platform. And one of the reasons that we believe that is the case has to do with the frequency. So this is a anecdotal, if you will, observation from the 120 or so listings that Miles directly manages for our customers. And in all of those cases, we upload 4 or 5 photos a month. We have a plan to upload photos each. It doesn't have to be all at once. It can be at different times. But in total, we want to target 4 or 5 photos per month being added by the owner of those listings into the system. And when we do that, we see an average of 10 to 30% lift in exposures for that business. So obviously there are different circumstances in there, but this is a really easy thing for you to do, is make sure that you have a plan to upload photos every month. They don't have to be professional photos. You can go take them with your phone. You can put them in there. But this is one of the easiest things in this whole presentation, is to upload some photos and then get additional exposure as a result of that. And that's because it appears that the signal, this is a really strong signal to Google that you are actively managing and that you are involved in the keeping your listing up to date. So this is one of the strongest signals that you can give their algorithm, is uploading those 4 or 5 photos per month to get that increase in exposure. So that's a great one. What kind of photos do we want to take? We've looked at thousands of these listings. This is a competitive landscape. If we're going to take a photo, what sort of thing are we looking for? The first thing we want to do is take an informative photo. We might have a really beautiful photo that is a detail of something, that might be an interesting texture or something else. But that's not what we want to preference. We want to preference things that help a consumer understand the size, the scale, the context, what's inside the building, how many tables are there, how much room is there, what does the outside look like. Those are all things that are going to be informative. Secondly, then, this is a competitive landscape, so we want to make sure that we have images that are attractive. This is why we see lots of stuff with bright colors, oversaturated colors, brights, darks. Those are the kinds of things that are eye-catching, and so those tend to do better in this platform when people are looking at them. And then right now, especially, yeah.
To that point, we have a question from one of our participants. Can you change the order of photos that appear so that the ones that are better, that meet these criteria, show up higher in the listings, or is that something that you're at Google's mercy for?
The only thing you can do is choose your cover photo, which didn't even used to be the case. So there is a slide in here about changing the cover photo. So you can choose from the ones that you have uploaded which one you want to be the cover. I have seen cases where that's been overridden, but for the most part, choosing a cover photo is really the only input that you have. Anything after that is going to be based on the algorithmic ranking of how that photo is performing. And that will mix both yours and your customers. Again, though, if you've got photos in there and you're uploading 4 or 5 photos a month, those are the ones that are going to get more views, even if there's a much higher volume, as we saw in that earlier stat of customer photos in there. The third thing we want to think about, particularly right now, is recency. And I've been working with destinations and businesses all over the globe for 20 years, and I've been through all kinds of different crises. I'm not saying I've been through a pandemic. I'm not that old. But the one thing that all of those crises has in common is the recency of photos. That's what people want to know right now, is what does this place look like now? I don't want to see photos that are old. I want to see what it looks like right now. So this third piece is making sure that things are recent and that they're up to date. So what do those things look like? Here's a good and a bad. This photo is good. It's informative. It's attractive. It's, clearly understands where we are and what's going on there. Then we have a photo of the same place from kind of the same area, but it's off kilter and it's sort of washed out and we can't really read what's going on there. So that's a really good example of a good versus a bad. And then the other thing I'll just highlight is that it's not worth spending hundreds of dollars or hours trying to tweak these photos, but it is worth making some minor tweaks. This is the same dish from the same restaurant taken by the same guy at the same time, but from two different angles. One of them is a little bit brighter colors and the composition is slightly different. The other one is a little bit of a close up and the colors are a little bit washed out. And that's a 10 times difference in the views for those two photos just because of those minor tweaks. So it's worth taking maybe a minute or two, especially in your app on your phone, maybe adjust some, adjust some saturation, maybe some sharpness, contrast, things like that, and then leave it at that, post it, and go forward from there.
And
A
if
few
you're a
other
restaurant, it's worth investing in an LED light to go with your digital camera so that you can get brighter pictures like that.
Absolutely true. And especially when taking food. Now, taking pictures of food has gotten way better than it used to be. Most of today's phones do a lot better job of taking pictures of food than even traditional DSLRs did, maybe 5 or 10 years ago. So it is a lot better, but you're absolutely right, Barry. You want to make sure that you have good lighting when you do that. A few other best practices for taking photos. The first one, most important one, is you can only upload photos that you created or you own the complete rights to. So you have to be careful about that. Basically, when you're uploading them, you're saying that you have those rights and that you are able to confer them to Google. Secondly, you want to upload high resolution images. We think about the phone and it's got a tiny screen, and so we think it doesn't really matter, but it absolutely does. So you want to make sure that you're uploading as high a resolution image as you can, within reason, of course. Basically, any phone that was made in the last 10 years is going to produce an image that is high enough. You just don't want to be reducing them before you upload them. You don't want to use filters. This is not Instagram, so you don't want to use, sepia tones or things like that. You just want to stick with maybe some saturation, some contrast, right? Color, a few little tweaks that way. And then you want to avoid seasonal images if you can, because you want them to be able to last for longer, unless of course your business is seasonal, in which case you definitely want to upload seasonal images. Try to keep the vertical and horizontal lines as straight as possible, so that makes things nice and neat and tidy. Mostly you want to shoot horizontal images because those are the ones that are going to be preferenced inside this platform. You can add some verticals, and we think about phones as being vertical, but if you look at how Google displays that, almost everything that they do is in a horizontal format. If you're doing interiors or even exteriors, it's best to preference things without people. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it does make it easier for you for a couple of different reasons. Technically, you would have to get a release from people that appear in there, or you would have to blur their faces or their personally identifiable information. So it's easier to avoid that than it is to try to deal with those release forms and kind of working through all of those processes. Now, I'm not a lawyer. There's lots of legal sort of minutia that goes with that. It's just easier if you can take something that doesn't have identifiable people in it, and those tend to do better, again, because of that informative. We don't want to have to look around people. We want to understand what the context of the business is, and kind of, the shape and the scale and size of what's going on inside of there. All right, so this, to that earlier question, you can, in the app and in the web version, you can choose a cover and you can set your logo. Those are both good things to do. They're both signals that you are managing and keeping your stuff up to date. So you can choose the cover photo that is in there, and that's really the only input that you have in terms of the ranking order of those photos. So that one is inside either of those places when you want to do that. You can flag the poor quality and irrelevant images for removal. So what you want to do is look for this little flag icon, and then similar to the reviews and the other stuff we looked at, you have to choose from these options. And the most common one is going to be a poor quality or not a photo or video of this place. In my experience with thousands of these, it's probably 50-50. So it's worth doing, especially, once a month or every couple of months, you go through your photos and just go through, find the ones that don't really belong and flag them. But it's not worth going through a whole process or trying to fight about a particular image. You're really just better off going through the process of creating new photos and having a plan to do that, and do that every month. That's going to be your best defense against any of those things, rather than getting into a prolonged process about trying to get that removed. That was just a link to the forum, that shortcut that we talked about in reviews, if you really do think you have a problem that you can't resolve. Next, we'll talk about 360s and virtual tours. This is increasingly important in 2020. Suddenly, everyone is really interested in 360-degree tours. It's a great way for people to understand those informative things about your business, the context of it, the size of it, what's inside, how many rooms are there, things like that. And it's a great way for people to get that confidence before they go to a business, to be able to see what's going on inside of there. Used to be to hire someone to do this. There are certainly options for that. We'll talk about that in a minute, but you can do them yourself now with Google Street View app. You can download that. I have a slide about that in just a second. And you can actually, inside that app, you can build your own virtual tour that has these little arrows in it, and you can walk through the business. You can build that whole thing inside the app. You can take the 360s with the app. It's a bit finicky, but that's all stuff that is available to you. This is the Street View app, so you can download it. This is what the icon looks like in your app store. And then you can take a photosphere, and you see what it'll have you do is hold the phone up in all of these different angles, and it tries to construct a 360. They're okay. You can get by with that. It's certainly better than nothing, but it can be a little finicky trying to get those, depending on the camera that you have and the phone that you have, to get those things to line up before you upload them. There are different ways, different ideas that you can try to address with that. So this is an example of a hotel where they were doing some construction on the front of the hotel, but it was concerning to customers. And so that's a case where you could try to replace that imagery. This is my office here in Auckland, New Zealand, right behind this garbage truck. So these are some of the examples of things that do show up in Street View. You can try to replace those, but you will have to try to take it from exactly the same place, which means you're standing in the middle of a really busy road, which makes it really difficult to do. There are also cameras available that you can buy that will do kind of shortcut that process. They'll do a little bit better job. This is a Ricoh Theta V, is about $350 on Amazon. You can order that. Just takes, click, and you have a 360. It stitches them for you, and it actually connects directly to that Google Street View app if you want to upload them directly into your listing. Lastly, then, there are professionals that you can hire to do that. I encourage you to think about that if you are in a situation where you have something tricky, or you're thinking about doing multiples. It's definitely worth having someone who knows what they're doing to do that. There's a program called Google Street View Trusted where you can look that up and find people who are in your area. And then also Westchester County Tourism in Film is looking at some opportunities. So be sure to contact Barry and his team if it is something that you're interested in, to let them know that you want to be part of that program. So there's some options there about having people kind of do those 360s for you, but definitely a good thing to think about. The question that we always get about 360s is, what do I do with them? And there's a really easy answer to that, which is that you can embed them for free. This is just like embedding a YouTube video. So you go to this little menu button up here, and then you can go to embed a map, and you can copy this HTML right here and paste it right into your blog or your website, and then it'll have the little virtual tour that's built inside there, and that's all free. So that's a really easy way to extend the value of those 360s. Next, we'll talk about posts. Posts are a feature of Google My Business that appears inside your business profile. So you see down here at the bottom where we have the business profile, and then we'll have this little post in here, and it's got a photo, and it's got some text, and it has a button. These are completely free. They're really generally pretty high exposure. They're highly trackable. They're visual, and they're engaging. And again, because they're free, you can't beat the ROI. Okay, putting posts into your listing is probably the best 15 minutes that you will spend in terms of digital marketing in any given week, is putting a post in there. So this is inside your dashboard. You can go to posts. This is the button to activate that. You can also choose from these different types. And you put in a photo, you put in some text, you can choose a button, you can put your own tracking links in there, and have that show up in your listing in all of the different places. So that's on search and in maps and in the Maps app. You are limited a little bit in terms of what you can put in there. So there's some rules about the kinds of things that you can say and what you can't say. But in general, you have a photo, you have an offer, and you have a link. These are the button choices that you have that you can choose from to put in there. And you can actually put, depending on the type that you put in there, you can actually put like a coupon code and things like that. So of the thousands and tens of thousands of listings that we have looked at, less than 18% of them are actively using posts, and less than 40% of them have used a post ever. So this is a great opportunity. If you're already using posts, good on you. If you are not using posts, this is another one of the great things out of this, is to start using them. The median views across our evaluation is about 3,000 per week. Sometimes they can be considerably higher because it depends on the overall exposure of your business. And the average interaction is about 0.5%, which puts it between a banner ad and a pay-per-click ad. And again, for free, tough to beat the ROI on that. So here's some of the best practices that we found from using posts. You want to, again, it's a competitive landscape. Use an attention grabbing photo, make sure it has bright colors, focus your message on the first 100 characters, because that's what most people will see, even though it will allow you to put into up to 300 words. And then add your own tracking codes. So if you're doing tracking in Google Analytics, you can add your own tracking codes. One of the only places in Google's platform where you can add that for free. If you want to maximize it, you want to use 2 posts at a time, because those will fit sort of side by side. Anything after that is going to be in a carousel. So use 2 posts at a time, and then they only stay live for 7 days. So you want to repost that every week. Doesn't matter if you're reposting the same stuff, that's fine. But you do want to have a Monday or Sunday, make sure that you've got a plan. You're going to go in and take a post and put it in there. One of the most common questions we get is, can I use the same thing I used in other social media like Facebook? And the answer is absolutely. So it doesn't have to be unique to this. Doesn't even have to be unique week to week. It's just free exposure for whatever you want to try to promote. So you might as well take advantage of it. Our experience, so again, managing over 120 different listing types. So the ones that perform best for us tend to be event types. So if you can format whatever you're doing as an event, even if it's a sale or a brunch or things like that, if you could format it as an event, those tend to have the best overall performance. Of course, your results may vary. And we believe that is because they have a time component to them. So Google interprets those as being more important than other types of posts. So if you can make it into an event and have some times on it, then that is a great thing to do. Lastly, then we will look at insights. And so these are inside Google My Business. Yes, sir.
One question on the posts. Other than those that are for events, which it seems clear you want to get those out there like 5 to 7 days ahead of time, are there better times of day or week to add new posts, or is it just more important to do it consistently?
It's absolutely more important to do it consistently. So I don't have any particular, sometimes in email we go, Tuesday morning is the best time to send out an email, because of the way this is all discovery based. So it's all search based. And because of the way that works, it doesn't really matter when you do them. It just matters whether they're there or not. So if you haven't done one, then you're getting 0 exposure. And if you have done one, then obviously you're getting the exposure that's there. So that's the best way to maximize that. Good question though. Next, we're talking about insights. And so this is inside your Google My Business dashboard in the insights section. And this is stuff that you basically can't get anywhere else. There are some places you can kind of estimate some of these numbers, but this is stuff that's happening inside Google's platform that they are giving you a look at, actions that are being taken inside their platform. And that's really unique in the sense that there's no, Google doesn't post that stuff anywhere else. They're not going to tell you what's going on. So there's some valuable stuff in here. This first one is about how customers find you. So this is direct versus discovery. Direct is somebody knew your business name, and discovery is keywords. And so that blue one is about local pack, right? We were talking about the local pack earlier, and you have a keyword and you have a place. That's discovery is the blue part of that. And then the green is somebody knew the name of your business. In general, what you're looking for is about a 50-50 split. Okay, so if you have all green, then you're really missing out on opportunities in terms of discovery, like on keywords, categories, attributes, things like that. And if you're all blue, then it's, people don't understand your business name or they don't type it in. So ideally what you're looking for is something in that, kind of 50-50 sort of split in between those two. Another chart you can get in there is where customers viewed your business. This is sometimes enormous. So particularly in this case here, where we had 1/4, we had over 1 million views. And that's combining views on search, which is local pack, and displays where somebody typed in the name and got the actual profile panel. And then on maps, where somebody searched for the business, looked at the business profile, or saw a pin, a labeled pin, inside maps. And so those are all kind of aggregated in here, and you can see that those can be quite significant. In our audit of the tens of thousands, the average exposures per month was about 115, if you want to try to calculate what that is. You can also get customer actions, and you can see how many people visited a website, requested directions, or called you. So those are things that are happening inside your business profile. And then you can use that number to calculate your conversion rate. And the conversion rate is the customer actions divided by the total views will give you whatever the conversion rate is. So in this case, it's 7.75. Across the audit that we did of all of the different listings, this is what the average looks like. So it's just below 5% is what the average conversion rate is. If you're above that, you're good. You're beating the average. If you're below that, you are below the average, and maybe there are some things that you could do there. So if you are higher than 5%, I would say you're doing quite well. And if you're 3% or below, you probably ought to think about what other things you can do. All of those reports are available in the Google My Business app and in the dashboard. And there's some other interesting stuff that is only available in the web version of the dashboard that can give you some additional insight into your businesses. How people perceive them. So quick checklist. We want to monitor and respond to reviews. We want to set up messaging, but only if we have a plan to respond to that. We want to make sure that we're monitoring questions and answers because lots of owners are not, and there's weird stuff happening in there. We want to make sure that we have a post that is live every week. So we're getting the free exposure for those for at least one post. We want to have a plan to upload photos. So we want to take new photos every month. We want to take 4 or 5 photos, and we want to have a plan to post those consistently month after month. And then lastly, we want to use the insights to get information about what is really happening inside there, particularly that conversion rate. We actually have a couple of ways that we can help you with that. So moving from that checklist into a reminder about some of the tools that you have available to you. The first one is the Marketing Academy from Westchester County Tourism and Film that has over 100 articles about digital marketing. Some of them, this first section in here is very much about what we just talked about, Google My Business, but there are also tons of other sections in there about all kinds of other platforms, even writing search engine optimization, writing content for the web, setting up analytics, understanding analytics. There's all kinds of digital marketing stuff that is available to you through that. That academy. So this is the link that you can get to that, and you'll be asked to sign in with a Google account. So you'll go in and put in whatever account you want that you use. Can be a Gmail account or anything that is assigned to Google. So you'll type that in, and then you'll put in your password, and then you'll be taken to a page that looks like this, where you're going to want to put in a code. And so that code is going to give you free access. So you're going to type in visit Westchester, and then you will get access to the academy in that way. And then just real quickly, there's this navigation on the right-hand side. And as I mentioned, this first section is about Google My Business, but there's tons of other stuff in there, even social media stuff. There's also a number of tools that you can access. And we'll talk about those real quickly. So there's COVID-19 updates in there. Each article has a little bit of a summary that tells you what to expect in there, and then has a lot more detail. Sometimes they even have how-tos, like step-by-steps. There are some notes where we try to keep this up to date if things are changing in any of these platforms, and we say, hey, you should be aware of this. This article says this, but for the time being, this thing is happening. So that stuff is kept up to date, and that can be quite valuable. And then we've also added a badges system that helps you kind of encourage you to continue to use that platform. So what happens is you'll be able to read an article, and at the bottom you can mark that article as complete, and then we'll keep track of those. And the more you get, the higher the badge you will get inside that platform. So the system also periodically reminds you both of your status and recommends new content. So it will send you an email or two throughout the process just to say, hey, just wanted to let you know there were some new articles in here that you could consider reading. This is also a great place to get help. So if you have a question about really any of these topics, but particularly about Google My Business, you can go to the Ask a Question forum, and that will come through to our team, and we'll be able to address that. This does not go to Google, just so we're clear. This goes to our team, and we'll be able to we'll do our best to answer your question there. So that is that one. And then we also have a tool called the GMB Checkup. And the GMB Checkup is an optimization tool for you to be able to look at kind of a quick audit of how you're doing and make some suggestions about what you might want to pay attention to in your listing. And so that one has actually pre-calculates some of the things we talked about in this presentation. So you'll remember we talked about calculating a conversion rate and calculating a rating vector. So the Google My Business Checkup pre-calculates for those for you, so you can check that in every week, see how you're doing on conversion rate, see how you're doing on rating vector, and then be able to take action as a result of that. And then lastly, we do have some office hours available through Miles Partnership. The link is in the chat. We can help you claim and verify your business. We can help you troubleshoot issues, and we can answer any questions that you have specific to your business. So see the chat for that, that link. And I think that brings us to the end of our presentation. Barry or Natasha, any final words?
Hi, everybody. It's Barry again. I don't think Natasha was able to hop on, but I want to thank you all for taking the time to participate today. That was an awful lot of information. Thank you, CA, for giving us a lot of good stuff to think about and work on. And if it was as overwhelming to you as it seemed to me on the first pass, we will have this webinar available on our website within a few days, as well as the presentation slides. And my advice would be to, not be overwhelmed by it, but pick pieces of it and, start small. I think you'll find that many of the activities and tools that CA described, once you're familiar with them, don't actually take a ton of time and don't require an electrical engineering and computer science degree. So give it a shot, start small, one piece at a time. And I think you'll find that very quickly this will make a great difference in how visible and successful your business is through the Google platform. With that, I'd like to just introduce you to the panda that is here climbing for a better view of its handiwork on the Statue of Liberty. We had one more question. I'm sorry that somebody asked. If you have multiple locations and addresses, can this all be managed from a single account?
Yes, absolutely. You can have up to, I forget what the number is, but up to 100 businesses that belong to one account. The only caveat to that is that there's no way to sort of bulk change them, right? So you can't go in and make a post to all of them at the same time. You have to do them all individually, but they all can and should belong to one account, and they will be in one dashboard, and you'll just choose whichever listing you want to take action on.
Great. Thank you. I think that was all the questions we had because we covered the other ones en route. Thank you all very much. Have a great rest of the week, a great weekend, a happy Thanksgiving, and please stay in touch with us. We're here to help you at Westchester County Tourism and Film. Have a great day.
Thank you.